Making a video. Yeah, I hit the button anyway. So, I think it's a response video to Anti-Bullshit Man, Section M. Moral nihilism, defeatism are disjointed. Very good title. The same subject as Anti-Kantavad is bitching about also. In the sense that somehow we are, we have no choice but to be uncertain, vague, confused. Let's go through all the words for some sort of, fuzzy fog. We're back to that kind of argument again. And it's just so irritating. I don't see any of it. I can't see any of it. I can't see any reason for this difficulty in recognizing the processes involved that we're involved in, and the fact that they don't have any bigger picture kind of frame. The Anti-Kantavad's obsessing about the fact that the universe might be infinite. He claims, he doesn't have any evidence for that, but he just claims that it might be. Well, if it is, it doesn't produce controlling entities. It doesn't control things. It doesn't create over an infinite amount of time anything like us that is actually durable and is capable of maintaining the universe in any kind of clean, decent manner. So it just makes things that are somewhat aware, possibly aware as we are, and then shortly after, apparently, before they get any really big technology to go master the universe, they're annihilated. So that would be the conclusion one could draw if one says history is infinitely deep. But even that doesn't go anywhere, because the paradox of infinity is that there still can be unique events even in an infinite universe. So you still can't draw too many conclusions. But it's totally irrelevant to the fact that we know where we came from. We evolved on planet Earth, and under a very simple guidelines of natural selection, not complex selection. It's very crude forces, not complex forces. The nuance to it, but it's just not a complex game that produced us, the survival game. And we are a mixture now of an organism that acquired a tool like teeth, like sonar, like some other animals, fast speed. We acquired a capacity to manipulate the environment, to model it, and in some sense control our interaction with it through behavior nuance. And the capacity to do that gave us this bonus capacity to perceive the stupidity of it and the futility of it. And that's the burden, is dealing with that problem. That's the real dilemma. The dilemma is not resolving reality, the distinguishing chickpeas from car keys. That we can do. Fixing the problem of being too smart for the game we're built to play. That's a problem. So anyway, so to Anti-Bullshit Man, who's arguing that the universe doesn't do aught. It doesn't make declarations about right and wrong. Of course it doesn't. It doesn't have a brain. Claim isn't that the universe has some sort of justice league, that is going to go spank us when we're wrong, or piss on our grave. But the argument would be made, I would make, is that what we really want to be doing is asking ourselves, what would the supercomputer say? Ironically. Antikondravod used that as an example in one of his videos, a little comment by Spock about some sort of negative aspect of computer control or something, or the fallibility of it. And of course it's a fake drama series where problems are created for this very purpose, to play with them. But it doesn't have anything to do necessarily with a reality. There's nothing intrinsically or fundamentally wrong with computers beyond the people who program them. So obviously the flaw is not in the stars or in our computers, but in ourselves. And that flaw isn't going to be fixed by saying computers are bad, okay? No, that doesn't fix the human flaw, the pilot error. Blaming the plane doesn't correct for a pilot error. So that's just bogus. So I'm going to argue that logic is the game, and it's the longest term is the game, and the greatest benefit is the game, and the greatest reduction in harm is the more specific definition of benefit. And that's all logical, and that's what a supercomputer would tell you if it was here. If there was a supercomputer here who knew everything that needed to be known about the material universe and its function, it's not going to tell you anything different than I'm going to tell you now. It's just not. It's going to tell you you're caught up in a phenomenon created by a chemical nuance, not unlike fire. This idea of life form, living, is self-propagating, like a nuclear reaction, in a sense. And we're caught up in it. We're the byproduct of it, the end result of it, in some respects, the place where it doesn't go too far from here, in the sense that we've already broken natural selection, and we haven't replaced it with any other kind of coherent selection, so we're already stifled as an organism biologically. The DNA is not replicating in a sensible way relevant to the environment, and we're just in a limbo of where our knowledge base will take us. The thing evolving now is information, and its evolution is going to be, is clearly on a track that's very different in terms of it's a very, bad ideas get weeded out over time. They eventually die. You end up on the ash heap of history if you're made of shit. And that's what's happening. And all these old notions of purpose and function that people should be able to drive, the problem isn't how to find your keys. The problem is there somewhere you're supposed to be driving? If you don't know what the universe is, if you don't know what you're doing here, why do you think you have some right to get on the road and drive? Curious. You can't even understand the principle that your keys are likely somewhere where you left them, and they're not on Pluto. And yet you're going to sit there and tell me you're entitled to drive. I don't think so. Yeah. Right, so back to anti-bullshit man, no. So anyway, that's the real question. So what would intelligence say? And the substance of my argument that he ridicules, this idea that you really don't want to live a life and have the future piss on you, right? I mean, that's the idea. I think that is sensible. I think it's a sensible ambition in most people, is not to know that in an absolute sense they'll be declared evil. They wouldn't want to live their life and be declared evil, nasty, a waste, a blight. They wouldn't want to be declared some sort of diseased tissue, a cancer, just an absolute piece of horrible shit. You wouldn't want that written on your tombstone. An absolute horrible piece of fucking shit lies here. You don't want that on your tombstone. And the point is, the history gets judged. And it's not that somebody's going to personally judge you, maybe. Maybe that's not going to happen. But the facts is still going to exist. Whether somebody says it or not, it doesn't matter. It's going to exist as a truth. And you can hear that now. You can hear that critique now, if you just listen. You can hear the future saying it. You suck. You sucked. You dropped the ball. You fucked it up. So anyway, but the point is that there is, I think, a fundamental notion in the head that understands the basic mechanism of efficiency and function and strives to not be catastrophically out of balance with some notion of being efficient and functional and purposeful. And so if you can demonstrate to somebody that logic is going to demand that the future curse your current position, that the future is going to say something like, you should have, you ought to have, yeah, that's important. So saying the universe doesn't do ought doesn't mean anything. Intelligence can see it. Intelligence will recognize it. And you value relativists who want to keep saying that all we do is make up statements about reality. I just don't think you're being fair to what the real process is. We don't make it up. We observe it. We acknowledge it. We recognize it. Just as we recognize the difference between somebody's subjective statements about something's relative superiority, like somebody who is whatever, a better stander on one foot. You could say, that guy stands on one foot in such a much better way, because I have some sort of subjective definition of good way to stand on one foot. And the difference between those kind of statements, even though it's not a very good example, and more absolute statements that we know what sentient beings do, that they have qualitative states, that they have feelings that are good, feelings that are bad, and we can make judgments about those things that are quite absolute. And they're not subject to subjective opinion. They're beyond reasonable dispute, beyond reasonable, rational, logical challenge. If there was a Mr. Spock, or there was a supercomputer, it couldn't put any kind of something together that's going to be able to make a rational argument how it's not true, that the victim doesn't matter, that the suffering doesn't matter, that it doesn't matter whether you waste it or squander it or spoil it. It's not going to be able to make a rational statement saying it's okay to waste suffering. It's just not going to happen. So I guess that's all. But I think it's a sort of the important statement, I guess, in here is just the idea that what would a super intelligence say? What would, because we can sort of model things, right? We can model weather, we can model a lot of things, and people like Anticontavat are denying that capacity. That when we construct our models of what a hurricane's going to do or something, for example, that somehow that experience we've gleaned doesn't mean anything because the universe is infinite. That somehow, because the universe is doing something out there, because there's something happening outside the, the realm of Pluto, that somehow that's going to change the fact of whether this hurricane is going to go do what is calculated to do. And it's not. It's going to do what it's calculated to do. We these models are good, and the models that we've built, understanding, a good deal of our lineage and how we've gotten to this place, and what information we've acquired and how we've acquired it. Those are good models, and the projections we can make based on them are good projections. And they just don't like them. And then it gets back to anti-bullshit men who critiques the complaint that these value relativists don't have some sort of motive. And sorry, they do have a motive. They're not intellectually honest, because again, they can't explain to me why finding their car keys is problematic in terms of learning anything or using logic and applying it, when somehow they don't have to apply those same standards to answering the question of why they should have a car in the first place, why they should be allowed to even drive. If they're not certain about how to find car keys, if they don't know how, if they can't be sure that the reasoning they're applying in deducing where car keys are is reliable, then how do they have a right to do something as obviously more risk dangerous as driving? They got no rational explanation for that. Anyway, and there's no explanation for that kind of intellectual dishonesty, obvious intellectual dishonesty, without some sort of payoff, some sort of bribery, some sort of incentive to break the rules that overtly. There has to be a convenience being served, and the convenience, I think, clearly is an unwillingness to accept the responsibilities that come with recognizing the fundamental problems built in to our existence and the obligations those problems create. The obligation to be productive, to maximize your efficiency, to get the most you can out of your exchange in this game, to leave the place greener than when you got it, kind of thing. So anyway, that's it. Sorry, I am so damn tired. I don't know what it is exactly, but something's broken. But my hair's getting better. The cat's gained weight. So some things are doing better around here. I am just dragging. But it is 4 in the morning and I'm still awake for no good reason. So anyway, that might be part of the problem. And it's just, life is it's quite depressing. So anyway, I think that's enough. There's more stuff to go through in his video. There's a ton of, I probably should go through the whole thing a second time. And I should maybe deal with some of these insults that are these insults of people who watch my videos. He insults my creativity. He insults. It's just such a stupid rag. And instead of making the argument, he just this fucking mocking tone that means absolutely nothing. Making statements I don't understand at all anyway. To say that somehow what Sam Harris has said in his moral landscape argument is somehow substantially different than my argument is idiotic. Sam Harris is saying exactly the same thing, that the truth seems quite obvious. We can make quite obvious deductions about the fact that feeling things feel, and they feel two different ways, very bad and not very bad. Some form of not very bad. So anyway, yeah, that's enough. And I'm tired, so it makes it doubly enough. So, yeah, I'll be back later. Got a couple other videos I'm gonna make, but I don't know.